Hi, I'm Lindy Earle. I have been married for 25 years. I have three adult children. I have been divorced and on my own for almost 5 years. While everyone's marriage and journey are a little bit different, I have found a lot of similarities. You can see what I write about on georgianewsdaily.com. In the working world, I was a college professor. I've been vice president in a large corporation. I've been a stay-at-home mom, which is actually my longest running role. I've been an entrepreneur, a speaker, an author, and now I'm a columnist. As I said, georgianewsdaily.com. My hope is that in sharing my journey, I can help others along their path. There's good as well as bad after divorce. Sometimes it comes back and forth. Sometimes there's a whole lot of bad in a row before you get a whole lot of good in a row. But I want everyone to really make a point of looking for the good. There is a silver lining in every situation. Today, I'm here with Kenneth Stepp. He's a colleague, a friend, a fellow divorced person. He is also navigating the waters of life after divorce. Hello, Kenneth.
Hello, Lindy.
How are
Thank you for including me.
Oh, I'm thrilled you're here.
I'm
How are
good
you?
to be here.
How are you doing today?
Wonderful. Thank you.
Good, good. Well, our topic today is mistakes of online dating.
Lindy, how long did it take you to return to dating after your divorce? And explain your process.
Good question. It actually took me a while. I had been just surrounded by a lot of really good friends, male and female, after my divorce. And I was on a weekend away with my best friend, a girl. And on our last night in the hotel, she informed me that we were going to get online. And so I wrote her profile and she wrote mine. And that was the beginning. It was after 3 years of being divorced, though, before I felt myself ready to enter this world. And I've actually found it to be, through all the tribulations, a very positive experience.
What did you learn while writing your profile?
Oh, well, that's really interesting. I learned a lot really fast. You have to understand, I was really pushed off the edge of the pier. So I suddenly found myself, floundering and treading water. So the first thing I learned is there is a different language online. When you fill out the forms, there's a box called wants to date but nothing serious. Well, that sounded about right. I was just new at this. So what I didn't know is that that box means open to hookups, willing to be friends with benefits, basically open to sleeping around. I just didn't know that. Now, an online profile will often ask for basically a subheading, like in an ad, just a short line that talks about you. Well, I like to bake and I have a sweet tooth, so I wrote something about liking chocolate. I did not know that chocolate is a euphemism for men of color. So I have just written that I'm open to sleeping around and I like men of color. You can't imagine the messages I was getting on that dating site. I was very popular in a very quick way, but not in the way I wanted.
What else did you learn?
Well, once I got past these mistakes, and it's okay that y'all are laughing right now. Once I got past the mistakes, I learned keep your profile short. Nobody wants to read a book about you. If you're a famous person, somebody will write a biography. But for the rest of us, excuse me, you are not educating anyone. You're putting enough information out there that you can find some similarities. For instance, I like sports, especially live sports. So what I'm looking for is somebody who will connect with me and want to watch football games every Sunday afternoon. I don't want somebody who can tolerate football and is willing to sit there. I want to have the similarity. So that's what I wanted. Also, tell the truth. Guys, admit your height. Ladies, admit your weight. they're going to find out the truth anyway. And it's better for you to accept who you are. If there's something you don't like about yourself, if it's possible to change it, do it. Guys, I'm not a blonde. This is all fake. So change what you like, but admit who you are, admit the truth. If you're separated, don't claim you're divorced. The truth will come out, and honestly, you can be more hurt and hurt other people by not sharing the truth up front. Let them know that you're not in a relationship mode where you can move forward to commitment because you're still committed to somebody else.
Lindy, what do you look for while online speaking with these men?
Again, I learned from experience. The first thing you look for are scammers. They are out there. Another friend helped me with this. She pointed out that profiles that often have people listed as widowers, whether or not they're international, it'll be obvious in the way the profiles and their messages are written. These are just some things to look for. I got taken in by a few when I was new at this. One claimed to be an architect. He said he was working in Africa. Oh, they're always out of town, so that way they can't meet. But he was working on a youth center that he was designing and building, really heartstrings kind of stuff. And before long, really very quickly, he asked if I would send him some iTunes cards that he needed for the children. And as soon as somebody asks me for any sort of money, I'm out. But I just thought, really? You're scamming women for iTunes cards? He must have a lot of people in his database if he's making a living $10 at a time. My funniest scammer, though, was a gentleman who was obviously international. So I asked where he was born, and he said Brazil. So I asked what his first language was. He said English. I said, no. I called him on it. And I said, no, your first language is obviously not English. And he said, oh, no, I thought you meant the first language I learned. He says, well, I'm from Brazil, so my first language is Brazilian. Oops. People from Brazil speak Portuguese. Caught. Sorry, dude. We're done.
Lindy, are there any women who scam men too?
Oh, I hate to admit it, but yes, I have heard the stories. Very common story. I've heard this from more than one gentleman. They get interested in a woman. They get to the point of asking her out, and the woman's always out of town for the first couple days. Doesn't matter if you're asking her out on a Tuesday or a Friday. Oh, I'm out of town. And so they make a date for a few days later. The day of the date, they contact their gentleman and say, I'm on my way home and my car broke down. And oh my gosh, I really, really want to see you tonight. I'm so excited about meeting you. And there may even be promises of how appreciative they're going to be if you will just send them the money to fix the car. And oh, by the way, they've already taken it to a local shop and they know exactly how much money you need to send them so that they can come home and have a great evening with you. I don't know anybody who has fallen for this, but I've heard the line more than once.
Wow. Is there an order or sequence to online dating?
Yes, there should be. I've made the mistake of missing it. I have friends who have made the mistake of missing it. And as one friend has told me, every time he's done things out of order, he's been sorry. But basically, you need to start by messaging within your site. Now, if somebody is pushing really hard, here's my email, I need to talk to you by email better, or texting immediately, that might be the sign of a scammer. But you start with messaging, and then as you're comfortable, you do move to exchanging cell phone numbers. And again, you should start by texting, and then you move to a phone conversation. And when things are going well, you can choose to meet. Now, in my case, the conversation by message went so well that when he suggested we meet, I agreed. So it wasn't until we were speaking that I learned this gentleman had a habit of ending every sentence with a giggle. So when we met, he said, "Oh, it's so nice to meet you." And I said, "Thank you. It's nice to meet you." He said, "I'm glad to hear it." And I thought, okay, the man's just nervous. No, he spent the entire evening ending every sentence, not just to me, but to other people with whom we spoke that evening, with his giggle. So finally, again, I chose to ask, "Are you aware of this?" He said, "Oh, yes. People have told me about it before." He said, "But I can't do anything about it." And I thought, no, you can't help but do it, but I can help but have to hear it. So that one ended that evening. And honestly, it probably never would have happened if I had followed a logical, intelligent order.
Lindy, do you have any rules for the first meet and greet?
Yeah, they're pretty normal. Um, you should definitely meet someplace in a public place. You want to drive separately. You need your escape route. I think it's kind to go halfway between the two of you, especially um, if there is a distance in question or if there's traffic in question. It's not a bad idea to have a friend call you into the date. Don't be surprised if you get caught when your phone rings 15 or 20 minutes after your date. They'll look at you and say, "Oh, is that your emergency out?" And if it is your emergency out and you want to use it, you say, "No, but as a matter of fact, I do have to go." Or you say, "Well, actually, yes, it is, but I'm having too much fun, so I'm going to ignore it." And that's just a compliment to them. Um, I like to use the additional rule of no money should change hands, as meaning I don't want to be taken out to dinner or even coffee or a drink on the first date. So I opt for very public walks in very public parks. Now, make sure it is a well-traveled park. Meeting in a city where people are moving around, that's great. Going for a walk on an isolated trail, not such a good idea. It sounds nice, but don't get too far off the path.
So, after all this, will there be a date?
You kind of hope so, don't you? That's the point of this. You want to find someone compatible, and you might feel when you first start that there are a lot of frogs before you get to your prince, or frogettes and princesses, gentlemen. So, after I followed all the rules, we did meet, we did, have our messages, we had our phone calls, everything went really, really well. We met, it was winter, so we met in a mall and sat outside in one of the courts and just talked and chatted and had a lovely evening. So yeah, the following week he invited me to dinner and I agreed. And I guess I hadn't realized how much the first night he had talked and talked. And so this evening he starts and he's again talking. He did give me an obligatory, "So how was your week?" And I said it was fine. And that was it. I was done for the night. So as we're sitting at dinner and I'm hearing some of his stories for the third time. Now we've only met twice and I'm hearing his stories for the third time. So it tells you he had limited information. But he was going on and on about how being a short man, obviously it didn't bother me because I was out with a gentleman, but he was going on and on about how women would leave him mid-conversation if a tall gentleman entered the room. And by this time, I pretty much decided that the relationship was over. And so I was bold enough to say, well, maybe these girls weren't leaving because a tall guy entered the room, but because you were going on and on and on and not actually having a conversation, but you were pretty much just diatribing. You were just talking at them instead of to them. Well, the gentleman did not take this well. Remember, this is my first date in 5 years, or 3 years. And a few minutes later, the bill came, and the server put it halfway down the table. And the gentleman naturally reached for it. He had invited me to dinner, so it was his bill. And he reached for it. And then, because he was angry at what I just said, I guess, he leans back and folds his arms and just glares at me. So I let him sit for a minute, and then I reached forward and I said, "Well, is this my bill?" And he says, or we can split it. And the anger is just palpable. And I said, no, I'm not a Dutch treat kind of girl. And I paid that bill, and I thought, my gosh, I got off so cheap to get out of hearing his stories for the rest of my life. I was happy to have it done. And again, drive separately.
What a story. So was that it?
Oh, with him?
Yeah.
You would think so. No, that was a Saturday night. The following Monday, I get texts from the gentleman as though nothing had happened, as though we'd had a great evening, which I ignored. And these texts continued for over a week. And then finally, back on the original site, I get a message from him saying he thinks it's best if we see other people. And I'm like, you think? Maybe I already figured that out. But it's just kind of a warning to me, just because you think it's over, they may not. But guys, if you're sticking your date with the check and she's running out the door, don't chase her.
Well, that is an interesting story. Does this mean bad dates happen in reverse when women expect to be wined and dined?
Sadly, yes. I think this gentleman was the exception for men. I've heard far too many stories about the women who very much expect to be wined and dined. One friend, he invited a woman out for coffee. She said dinner. He said where. She named an outrageously expensive restaurant. He said that's kind of a year anniversary place. That's not an every Saturday night place. They never did go out because it was just obvious. Had another friend tell me the story of the woman sitting, ordering the most expensive entree, sitting and eating, not saying a word to him. Meal ended. She got up, thanked him, and left the restaurant. Another story, the woman stayed for the entire meal. They did have a lovely evening. He walked her to her car. She stuck out her hand and said, thank you, I'm a serial dater. This was fun. And she was gone. And there are women out there who very much just want nice meals and somebody else to pay for them. So you need to find out up front who these women are and avoid them.
So mistakes happen in both directions, male to female and vice versa. And they can be made at any point during original messaging, at the meet and greet, or once a date has begun.
Very well said. You did a great synopsis there. It's all a game, but you need to see it as an adventure. Be careful, look after yourself, and learn so that you don't make some of the mistakes that can be made.
Any last piece of advice?
Yes. Don't give up. Your forever is out there. They're probably looking for you right now, too. Thank you, Kenneth. I appreciate your being here.
Thank you for having me.
It was great. That's Life After Divorce, and I am Lindy Earle.